How's it going? Hello, I'm James Ford, and I'll be your host. This is Truth Today, an independent media source. Um, and what are we doing here? Well, hopefully, multiple avenues of media, entertainment, interview, and non expert commentary. Just an average individual such as myself who has focused a bit of more attention on maybe what's going on outside of my own comfort zone, and come to see that the world appears to be much different than I had imagined, which opens up for more questions. So here we are. So I guess in a general way, if this is somewhat of a mission statement, the goal is to ask questions, to discern that information, to identify the factors of the situation, or perhaps in asking the questions and observing the information, seeing the falseness for the false, removing that, and coming upon the truth, which none of us own. It is simply there. And then we perhaps engage with the world in a much more positive place, generally speaking. And as I'm saying, it sounds kind of like, geez, what, a little drab, don't you think? But hopefully we can have some fun in this discovery. So, this is just my attempt of engaging with the world in a positive way. It seems to be a little bit more difficult today when one does see that the status quo is perhaps not what we think it is, and our actions are not necessarily related to the ground that we assumed it was. Anyway, and living in a constitutional republic, or supposedly, I mean, honestly, ask yourself, the actions we're taking as a nation, which is us, we are. We are supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, by the people. So our actions as a government are really our responsibility. And seem to have come to a point where we have presidents, we have these men who are supposed to be leaders amongst equals, people endowed with inalienable rights by our Creator, which just means that in a nation that has a separation of church and state, just that means that whatever you understand is that power, that force that has given life to all of us, is inalienable rights endowed by the Creator. Because at the time when our forefathers established this country, they weren't giving us rights. They were declaring, no, we are individuals. Because at the time, there was a monarchy, which was the British Empire, King George III, and they had divine right to rule, which was a concept, an idea, a practice, ideology, a tradition from their standpoint, and a means of rule that people comply to, a concept that people comply to and enacted, was that there was a royal family, that their bloodline was not endowed, but they were given divine right by God to rule over everyone else on the planet, and that was granted to them by God. So we, by saying the inalienable rights, said no, that is not true. We are all equal because we all have the life that was breathed, the breath of God into us, if you will, or whatever that story is for you of creation. Some say that it may have been just the king's second, third, and fourth siblings who said no, because they once the king was made king, he said, "Hey, I got to get rid of these guys. They're might be looking to get my seat." So the second, third, and fourth brothers were sometimes banished, and so they came together and said, "Oh well, no, we got to organize." So some say that they were the people that were meant to be equal, but everybody else was still the rabble. But who knows? And who, the forefathers were not perfect people, but the principles ring true, and the principles are aligned with natural law and common law. And it can be simple as do not trespass against anyone else or their property. And the forefathers seem to have a keen understanding of the human condition, because if you look at the Constitution, checks and balances, the idea of absolute power corrupts absolutely, is not that there will be good men or men of learning and pedigree that will be able to rule others. It's no, man is fallible. We will have leaders amongst the equals, which is a natural, some people are natural born leaders, but we are amongst equals. And because they are a leader, they will lead. But it's not about pedigree. It's not about education. I mean, these things come along with the character. These are things that character, people who have that character, branch out into those attributes as a leader. So anyway, it's about destroying any concept and idea of monarchy, because it is a false idea and concept. So today we live in a world that is far removed from the constitutional principles, or principles of natural law. And people say, "Oh, geez, it's just too much of a mess." But maybe we just can get back to basics. Perhaps we might be able to salvage something. I mean, one place to start is to understand where we are and the actions we're taking now. And one of the situations that we're in that we just gotten so comfortable with, and just, I guess it's the norm that we've lived in, is that we've been in a state of war for close to 20 years. The war on terror started, it's 2019, after 2001. So there was, since we have declared a war, and this is a choice that was made that has to be looked into. And let's not make it about the personality, if someone's a good person or a bad person. But are these choices that were made or are being made, are they derived from constitutional principles that are of and for the people? That's what is important. It's not about this person being a bad guy, this guy being a good guy. Let's put that aside. It's a waste of time, and it's intentionally used to get us off the ball. By declaring a war on terror, instead of making it a criminal investigation, it set us on a total different path. And one of the outcomes of that choice is that when we are in a state of war, the Constitution can be put to the side because we are in a state of an emergency. And then the commander-in-chief and the legislator, Congress, get to act outside constitutional norms. And obviously, again, without making this a bad guy, good guy, this could be mismanaged. And that's the simple case. And that's the simple fact that we live in. And if we look at the Patriot Act, again, let's put aside this guy's a bad guy, that person's a good guy. The Patriot Act itself cannot stand on its legs in any relation to the Constitution. And even in a state of war, in a state of emergency, to implement the Patriot Act is still a far stretch. And if we look at the surveillance state we live in now, in relation to the NSA, you can talk to people such as William Binney, who was a who resigned from the NSA. He resigned because he was the head of the surveillance of the Stasi and of the Soviet Union for over 20 years. And he actually designed the software leading into 9/11 that was called Operation Shoestring. And what would happen was the software would have the capability of singling out an individual who was a perceived bad guy, perhaps a terrorist or someone who that they would be looking after. And they could surveil all his information. But what happened at that time, the president and the vice president made a choice of choosing another software program, which was a mass grab of information. So Mr. Binney said the issues with this is, one, you don't have the storage or the capability to discern all that information that's coming in at once. So you can't catch the bad guys while they're in the act, because it's just too much information to catch. But what it's good for is if you want to target someone afterwards, or if you want to find out, say you have some people being voted into a certain office, and you might have an advantage or disadvantage in regards to who's being elected. So if you find out all the information on this person, there's multiple things that you can do in regards to that situation. And one, we say, well, we want to find out if this is a bad person. The truth of the matter is people who are more on the corrupt side of this coin want to see if they have any dirt, because once they get in office, then they could use the dirt against them. So Mr. Binney, William Binney, who was a head of NASA surveillance and a designer of this software, resigned after 2001. He said because they're using this other technology, and we are now, and this is his words, he said the United States of America are using the tactics of the Stasi and the Soviets against its own people. And he says actually they would be in awe of the technologies we have and how we're using that against our own people. Daunting. That arises another question of whistleblowers. People say that whistleblowers put people in danger. You see, unfortunately, our media has been very much held to certain talking points. I know many people in the military. I know many people in the police department. I have no wish to be at odds with them. And unfortunately, because of the propaganda and because of the talking points, it has become just to speak in any way that may be against the party line, you are opposition, unfortunately. And I say this, I have nothing against any police officer, any military man. My only issue is that we are being divided, I feel, against each other. So, it's a lot of information. And I guess we have a lot to talk about. And perhaps I think I dropped the ball there a little bit in regards to what I was talking about. I'm trying to be, hello. This is Walter Cronkite. Anyway, it's more about the information. And hopefully we can start asking some questions. We're not in a good place, if we're honest with ourselves. And this covert, well, this is it. It's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it was this. It's like, the world is upside down. We were in a country where the people were supposed to be completely free, and their privacy and rights were supposed to be protected by the government. And the government was supposed to be transparent because it is of the people. But we live in a world where all, to a degree that we are not even aware of, that some people unfortunately know more when they are targeted than the average citizen. But even the average citizen is being completely surveilled every day, every moment of their life, and tracked. We live in a surveillance state. Complete obliteration of privacy rights. And the propaganda and conditioning to make people comfortable with it. I believe this was what all the reality TV was about, was to really get people comfortable with being viewed and watching other people. So you have a populace that has no privacy and a government which is supposed to be transparent because it's supposed to be of and by the people, that is totally opaque, that is total, everything is national security. We live in an area where it used to be, the CIA was supposed to be a foreign entity to deal with foreign affairs, and the FBI here. But now we have, say in New York City, they have their own intelligence agency. And not only do they have their own intelligence agency, but they break it down where localities, like say like a place like Staten Island, and even certain parts of Staten Island will have watch groups which are now covert and connected to the police departments and the state intelligence departments to the national. And that not only is that an attack on the privacy of the civilians, people that's supposed to be protected and served, but it destroys checks and balances. There are no checks and balances. National, state, and individual sovereignty is obliterated. And it all in the name of security. And all going back to 9/11. And regardless of who's good, who's bad, who did this, who did that, let's look at the factors of where we are and who we are supposed to be. Are we cowards? If someone threatens you or someone hits you, are you going to stay in your house or are you going to walk outside your home? I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said is that anyone who gives up their freedom for a little bit of security will not have or nor deserves either. Because once you give up your freedoms and rights for the illusion of security from someone else, such as the government, you hand it all over. Because they lived through it already. These are practice principles from experience. These aren't conceptual ideas that, well, say, well, these were experiences that the father lived under a crown. And they were far from perfect. So, I'm James Ford. And I don't know the answers, but I believe that I've stepped out of the box a bit and I've asked a few questions and seen the falseness of the false in some areas of in my own life. Because it really all started through a huge default in myself that I just had to address, and by addressing my own erroneous ideas and ideologies, I looked out to how did that engage with the world, or how I engage with the world, and I just started looking at things, and things changed for me. It seems the world is, we live in a far different world that is presented to us, or that we gather from the information we're getting through this synthetic world we live in. We live in a digital age that is contrived through media agencies, and it's not about saying these are bad, these are good, but there are people paid. You have a producer, you have a writer, you have, it's entertainment, it's commercials. We live in a 24/7 infomercial. And it relates going back to public relations with Edward Bernays, who created public relations that was related to propaganda, where they began to use psychology to have individuals identify themselves, their being, with a product. And we've extended that through this 24/7 commercial world of propaganda and commercials, of identifying ourselves with the external. We've done it with politics. And people identify their being with the president or their party. And if you question their party line, they take it as if you're attacking their identity, their sense of being. That's not a healthy way to operate in society. And the truth is, it's very limited to the potential that we have as human beings. And let me say this, I don't believe in revolution. I believe the revolution needs to take place within individual human beings. Because, I forget who said it, I think it was Blake, is that the hand that crushes the hand of the oppressor becomes the hand of the oppressor. We need to understand where we're at. Get back to basic principles. The United States of America is amazing. We're not, the Constitution is the country. We've thrown it away. We have allowed multinational foreigners, multinational corporations, elite money interests to take away the Constitution, which is the heart of America, which gives us our rights. Not gives us our rights, but it declares our rights. And when they're taken away, we capitulate to authority, and that security that Benjamin Franklin said, do not give up your rights for security to any authority. And that doesn't mean anarchy. As a matter of fact, anarchy means no masters and no slaves. Anarchy is rule, and is not. So it means no rulers. That doesn't mean, I could be wrong. It's something like that. But the point being is, it doesn't mean going, it means total self-responsibility. It doesn't mean going willy-nilly and crazy and breaking stuff and causing chaos. No, it's the opposite. It's that we are responsible as human beings for our actions in the world. That we don't need an authority or an experts telling us how to put one foot in front of the other. And we're getting very close to a world, a digital prison. And I say that is that take a look at all these conveniences. By the slide of a hand, they can be very unmanageable restrictions. Because think of something that you use digitally. If someone's controlling and they just decide to say off, say you no longer have, we don't know how this, it may sound far-fetched, but it's not a long way to say how it'd be very easy to just close people out of a digital world. So anyway, I guess this was a bit of an introduction. I'm James Ford. This is Truth Today, and be seeing you soon. Thanks. Hope to see you soon. Take care.